sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.
We're diving deep into a plane crash that happened in Northeast Philadelphia Friday evening.
Oh, a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, picture this. It's dinner time. People are just out and about, near the Roosevelt Mall.
Right.
And all of a sudden, a plane just falls out of the sky.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, we're talking cars on fire, explosions that people could hear for miles.
Oh.
And we're going to be using a lot of sources today. Eyewitness accounts, official statements, news reports, all trying to figure out what happened.
And I imagine they're all over the place.
Oh, absolutely.
So what are we going to try to do today?
Well, we're going to try to, piece together the timeline as best we can.
Yeah.
Understand the potential factors that led to the crash and, highlight the human impact of this tragedy as best we can.
Okay, so starting from the beginning.
Yeah, right from when that plane went down.
Okay.
It sounds like the initial reports were just pure chaos.
Oh, what?
Witnesses were saying they heard a sound like thunder.
Yeah.
And then this big explosion of light. Some people even thought a transformer had blown.
Really?
That's how intense it was.
Oh, wow.
And, you see this in a lot of these breaking news situations where it's just so much happening at once. People can't even process what they're seeing and hearing.
Adrenaline's pumping?
Right, exactly.
It's just pure chaos.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, you have that Ring doorbell footage.
Oh, rad.
Just capturing that plane coming down and the moment of impact. I mean, it's
chilling.
It's chilling, and it really drives home just the seriousness of this whole thing.
Absolutely. And, speaking of serious, let's talk about the victims.
Yeah.
And this is where things start to get, I don't know.
A little murky.
Yeah, murky.
Yeah.
We've seen reports that say anything from 2 people on board to 6.
Right, I saw that too.
So the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA,
right.
Initially they said there were 2 passengers.
Yeah.
But then you have Jet Rescue Air Ambulance saying there were 6, and they're saying it was 4 crew members, a young patient, and then someone with them.
Wow.
And then to add to the confusion, you have the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy.
Okay.
He also said there were 6 people on board.
So, I mean, how is it possible that we can't even get an accurate number of, passengers on this plane?
Well, I think, it might seem weird.
Yeah.
But right after a crash like this,
right.
Good information is hard to get.
Yeah.
Emergency responders are trying to rescue survivors.
Of course.
Officials are still trying to figure out what different people are saying.
Okay.
Sometimes it just takes time.
Yeah.
To figure out what happened.
You get that clear picture.
Yeah.
Almost like the fog of information is just as dense as the fog pilots have to fly through sometimes.
Exactly.
And it looks like this uncertainty extends to the victims' identities too.
Right. We know there's a slideshow about them.
Yeah.
But no names or anything specific like that have been released.
Yeah. And it just makes you think about all the families out there just waiting and hoping and just...
It's awful.
In this awful limbo.
Yeah.
But, in the meantime, the response on the ground has been massive.
Oh, yeah. Hundreds
of firefighters, first responders rushing to the scene, battling flames.
Must have been crazy.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And Mayor Sherelle Parker, she immediately told residents to stay away.
Right.
Highlighting all the damage to homes and cars.
Well, so this wasn't just a plane crash. This
affected the whole community.
Right. Right.
And then on a national level, you see President Trump and Vice President Vance offering condolences and support.
Yeah.
It's just a reminder that even these events that seem so far away when you see them on the news, they still touch everyone.
Yeah.
And I know everyone's wondering, what caused this plane to go down.
Right.
And weather seems like the obvious place to start.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, the pilot had to deal with rain, and some reports are even saying there might have been whiteout conditions at takeoff.
Oh, so flying blind right from the start.
Yeah, basically. And that's incredibly dangerous.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, huge challenge for any pilot.
Yeah.
But, what's interesting is that meteorologist Drew Anderson has said that ice wasn't a factor.
Okay.
Because of how high the plane was when it crashed.
So weather might have been a problem at first, but it might not be the whole story.
Exactly.
Okay.
And one of the things that really stood out to me was that debris flew into a diner.
Oh, my gosh. I read about that.
Yeah. And it actually hit a customer.
Oh, wow.
And they were seriously hurt.
That's awful. I mean, it makes you think about how hard that plane must hit.
Yeah.
And what path it took as it was coming down.
And that's where the investigation comes in.
Right.
So both the FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB,
right.
They'll be looking into it.
Okay.
You can kind of think of the NTSB as like the detectives for aviation accidents. They're the ones that are trying to figure out what went wrong.
Oh, okay.
And it can get really complicated.
So they'll be looking at everything from the plane's black box to the pilot's experience.
Oh, yeah, maintenance, records, all that.
It's like a giant jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
Where every piece could be a clue.
Exactly.
But the stakes are incredibly high because the goal is to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Right.
And while they're putting together, the technical side of things,
Yeah.
we also have to think about the human impact.
Of course.
The victims, their families, the community.
They're all dealing with this.
And that's what we'll be looking at next.
Right.
We'll dive deeper into their stories.
Yeah.
And talk about the challenges of getting accurate information during these breaking news situations and just, the broader implications of what happened.
Sounds good.
It's easy to get lost in all the, the technical stuff, the investigations, the possible causes.
Yeah.
But we can't forget that this is really about people. Real people, their lives were changed forever by this.
And, unfortunately, like we were talking about earlier, not having good information about the victims.
Yeah.
It just makes it that much harder for the families that are dealing with this.
Absolutely. Imagine being a family member, and you're just
Oh, it's awful.
desperate for updates.
Yeah.
But you're getting all these conflicting reports.
And nobody knows anything.
Right. It's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Every headline, every statistic, it's a human life, a story.
Right.
And while we wait for more information to come out, we just have to remember the emotional toll this is taking on the families.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about
Yeah.
how we as a society deal with information,
Right.
especially when it's breaking news like this.
Yeah, we saw how confusing it was when
Yeah.
there were all those different numbers about how many passengers there were.
Right. It shows how easily misinformation can spread.
Yeah.
And how important it is to think critically.
It's like we're all trying to put together a puzzle.
Right.
But we have pieces from different puzzles.
Exactly.
You think you're getting a clear picture, and then boom.
Everything changes.
Right. And that's why it's so important for journalists to be responsible,
Absolutely.
to check their facts, to be honest about what they know and what they don't know.
And not try to make things more exciting than they are.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, it's all about trust.
Yeah.
Trust in the sources, trust in the people investigating.
And trust in each other.
Right, as we're all just trying to understand what happened,
And that trust is hard to build.
especially these days.
Yeah, with social media and all that.
It's like a double-edged sword.
Right.
On the one hand, social media can get information out there really quickly.
Which can be really important in an emergency.
Exactly, but it can also lead to rumors and speculation.
Yeah.
So it's a balancing act.
It is, and it shows how important it is to be media literate.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, we all need to be smart about how we consume information.
Okay.
Questioning what we see and read
Yeah.
and being aware of our own biases.
It's like we all have to be our own fact checkers,
Yeah.
looking for other sources that say the same thing,
Right.
thinking about who's giving us the information.
And if something sounds too good or too bad to be true,
Exactly.
it probably is.
Right. And that brings us back to the investigation.
Yeah.
We mentioned the FAA and the NTSB before.
Right.
They're the ones trying to figure out what caused this plane to go down. And for people who might not know,
Yeah.
the black box, it's not actually a box, right?
It's not. No.
What is it?
It's actually two recorders.
Oh.
They're bright orange.
Huh.
And they're built to withstand like huge impacts and heat.
Wow.
One of them records what's happening in the cockpit,
Okay.
like conversations between the pilots and stuff.
So you can hear what was going on right before the crash.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the other one records flight data, like the altitude, airspeed, that kind of thing.
So it's like having a front row seat in the cockpit. That must be so valuable for the investigators.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's like one of the most important pieces of the puzzle.
Definitely. And the NTSB, they're very thorough.
Okay.
They're looking at everything.
So like maintenance records the pilot's training.
Oh, yeah, all of it.
It's like a giant forensic investigation.
Yeah. But instead of a crime scene.
It's the crash site and all the data from the flight.
Exactly.
And this investigation is going to take a while.
Oh, yeah.
It could be months, even years, before we know for sure what happened.
That's true.
And even then, we might not get a clear answer.
Right. Sometimes it's a bunch of different things.
Yeah, that all lead to the crash.
Exactly.
But even if there isn't like one simple explanation,
Yeah.
hopefully the investigation will tell us something
Yeah.
that can help prevent this from happening again.
Absolutely. That's the goal.
And that's an important point. While we're all, grieving and trying to deal with what happened,
Right.
we have to look ahead too
Yeah.
and think about what we can learn.
What can we do to make flying safer?
How can we make sure information is accurate and shared responsibly when news is breaking?
These are the questions we have to keep asking.
Even after the initial shock has worn off.
Yeah, and these are questions that require a lot of thought and careful consideration.
Right, because the goal is to prevent this from happening again.
And to create a world where everyone has good information.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other stuff that happened with this crash.
Okay.
We know there was debris all over the place.
Yeah.
And we talked about that piece that hit someone in the diner.
Oh, right.
What does that tell us about the force of the impact?
I mean, the fact that debris flew that far shows just how much energy is released in a plane crash. It's not just the point of impact.
Right. It affects a much bigger area.
Exactly.
And securing a crash site like that must be a nightmare.
Oh, yeah.
You have fuel leaks, fires.
Sometimes even explosives.
And then you have to collect all the debris.
It's a lot of work.
And it could be spread out over huge areas. Right.
It's a massive job.
It involves so many different groups working together.
Yeah. You have the first responders who are focused on saving people and putting out fires.
Right.
Then you have the investigators who have to document everything and collect evidence.
And all of this has to be done safely.
It's amazing how dedicated these people are.
It is. They're putting their own lives at risk.
Right. To help others and understand what happened so this doesn't happen again.
They don't always get the recognition they deserve.
No, they don't.
Especially when everyone's focused on the breaking news.
Okay, so let's talk about something that's been on my mind.
Okay.
Those conflicting reports about how many passengers there were.
Right.
It might seem like a small detail.
Yeah.
But it really shows how hard it is to get accurate information when news is breaking.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the beginning,
Yeah.
information is usually incomplete.
Okay.
Witnesses might see different things.
Oh.
Officials don't want to say anything until they're sure.
Yeah.
And then rumors start spreading on social media.
Yeah.
It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
There's so much information coming at you.
You don't know what to believe.
Right. And that's where critical thinking comes in.
Exactly. You have to think about where the information is coming from.
Yeah.
Look for other sources that say the same thing.
Yeah.
And be skeptical of anything that sounds too crazy.
Or too good to be true.
Right.
And we also have to remember that journalists make mistakes.
That's true.
They're under pressure to get the news out quickly.
And sometimes things slip through the cracks.
I think it's important to be patient.
Yeah.
And wait for all the facts to come out.
The first wave of information is just the beginning.
Right. The real story comes later.
After careful analysis.
And that's where we as citizens come in.
Right.
We have to be smart about the information we consume.
Question our assumptions.
Yeah.
Consider different perspectives.
And be willing to change our minds if we get new information.
It's not easy,
Especially with all the information out there these days.
but it's important.
If we want to understand the world and make good decisions,
Exactly.
and as we learn more about this plane crash,
Yeah.
it's important to keep these things in mind.
Right.
We have to be critical of the information we see
Be patient while the investigation's going on.
and be empathetic towards the people affected by this.
Yeah. And maybe most importantly,
Yeah.
we have to remember that even in the face of tragedy, there's still hope.
Hope for healing
Hope for progress.
and hope that this won't happen again.
It's that hope, that desire for a better future
Right.
that makes us want to understand
Ask the hard questions.
and to work towards positive change.
Okay, so in the final part of our deep dive, we're going to explore some of the bigger issues raised by this crash.
Okay.
We'll look at how it might affect aviation regulations,
Right.
the ongoing search for answers,
And the legacy of this tragedy.
but also look at the human stories behind the headlines,
Yeah.
the resilience of the community.
And the power of hope in the face of adversity.
We've talked about a lot with this plane crash in Philly.
Yeah, from those first crazy reports
Right.
to what the investigators are doing.
And it seems like this is something with a lot of questions.
Definitely. Some that might not have easy answers.
Yeah, and while they're still looking into things,
Yeah.
it makes you think about the bigger picture.
Right. Like, what can we all learn from this?
What can we do to make flying safer?
And how do we deal with all the information out there when news is breaking?
Exactly. So many things to think about.
Yeah.
Let's start with safety.
Okay.
Every time a plane crashes, people start talking about the rules and how to do things better.
Right.
Do you think this crash will lead to any big changes
You could. Yeah.
in how we keep planes safe?
Yeah, the NTSB will probably find some specific things
Okay.
that caused this crash.
Right.
And those findings could change how we train pilots,
Right.
how we take care of planes,
Right.
even how we control air traffic.
It really makes you think about how one awful event can end up making things safer
Yeah, it's like a ripple effect.
for everyone else.
And that's why these investigations are so important.
Right.
It's not about blaming anyone.
It's about learning what went wrong.
So it doesn't happen again.
And speaking of learning, we talked about all that conflicting information.
Right, in those first few hours.
Yeah, and it's a reminder that we got to be careful.
Oh, yeah.
About what we read and believe.
Especially with social media.
It's like we're flooded with information all the time.
Yeah, from everywhere.
It's easy to just get swept up in it all.
But we got to take a step back.
Yeah.
Look at what we're seeing and hearing.
And be critical.
Find sources we can trust.
It's like we all have to be detectives.
Yeah.
Looking for clues and evidence.
Not jumping to conclusions.
Right, and sometimes that means admitting you just don't know yet.
And being patient.
While the whole story comes out.
Which can be hard.
Yeah, we're used to getting everything so fast these days.
But some things just take time.
Right, like a good investigation.
Exactly.
It's good to remember that the truth usually comes out slowly.
Bit by bit.
And while we wait for the NTSB to finish up, I think it's important to think about the people involved.
Of course.
The families who lost people.
The first responders.
The whole community.
They're all part of this, too.
It's easy to forget that behind every headline, every statistic,
there's a real person
whose life has been changed.
It's a powerful reminder
of just how much these tragedies cost.
Yeah.
And while we can't change what happened,
no,
we can offer support.
Empathy.
And learn from it.
And maybe even find some hope.
Hope for healing.
Hope for things getting better.
And hope that this won't happen again.
It's that hope, wanting a better future.
Right.
That pushes us to understand.
To ask the tough questions.
And to try to make things better.
Well, this has been a really tough deep dive.
It has.
But I think we covered a lot.
I think so, too.
We talked about the crash itself.
The investigation.
The victim.
The impact on the community.
The spread of information.
And what we can learn from it all.
And while we're wrapping up our deep dive... this story is far from over.
Right. The investigation is still going.
New information will come out.
And we'll keep learning more.
So we encourage you to keep following this story.
Think critically about what you read.
And engage in these important discussions.
About aviation safety.
And responsible reporting.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Into a topic that matters.
See you then.
Sound the alarm. I'm coming up. We'll have a ball. I'm sweet like a buttercup. You're a Barbie doll. Show them all what I'm made of. Strut down the hall. Won't stop till I get enough.